Senator Smith, you're the chair of the Environment and Energy Committee during the time that our governor has shown that he prioritizes dirty fuels over renewables. What progress can be made toward combating climate change while the governor stands in the way of clean energy initiatives?
I think while the governor stands in the way, not much. I mean, this is a little pessimistic in terms of a view, but this governor, during 5 years, at every opportunity has stopped any progress on either renewables or sustainability. There are those who suggest that he's distracted. I think there's some truth to that, but also the policies themselves are very anti-renewable, anti-sustainability. This state has been thrashed by Sandy. Sustainability should be at the top of everyone's list. And one of the reasons for our economic malaise is the very high cost of energy in this state. It doesn't have to be that high. In addition to that, over the past 5 years, we've had about $4 to $5 billion of societal benefits revenues being used for everything except what they're supposed to be used for. That money was supposed to help homeowners to have more energy efficient homes and more renewable energy, and the same for our businesses. The money's been grabbed and put into the general fund. So, and the plug was pulled on Reggie. I mean, you can go through this list, which is a horrible list of things that have been done to make us anti-renewable, anti-sustainable, and it's, you know, the pessimistic comment that I have to make is that until there's a new governor, I don't think there's going to be much progress. We pass legislation all the time. He vetoes it.
The BPU recently, again, put roadblocks in the way of offshore wind.
Yes.
Again, is that something that is just going to have to wait until we have a new governor?
Well, I hope not. But you know, we're really disappointed with not just the governor, but also the Board of Public Utilities. On this last Senate Environment and Energy Committee, we had 2 pieces of legislation that relate to that situation. The one would remove the cost-benefit test for a small pilot wind energy program. And it fits and conforms very nicely to the Fisherman's Energy proposal off the coast of Atlantic City. And the reason we're not generally willing to remove the cost benefits test, but it seems like the BPU just can't get out of its own way. We need to get a pilot program going so that we can actually see the costs and the benefits and really understand what role wind energy should play off the coast of New Jersey. So the legislation that came out of committee said remove that test for a small pilot program. And I know that the Senate President, Senator Sweeney, who is one of the major authors of the wind legislation in this state, will be supporting it. It'll get to the governor's desk, and chances are he's going to veto it. But, you know, hope springs eternal. The other piece of legislation that was on the last committee was a resolution criticizing the BPU. They've had 4 years under legislation. They were required. 4 years ago, legislation passed that said you should develop standards for wind, and they haven't done it. And then the 7 years ago, we passed legislation asking to set up an energy efficiency standard, a renewable portfolio type standard. Nothing's happened. So, you know, the record of not doing anything is magnificent in this state. All right, we used to be number 2 in the country on solar and renewables, and now we're like 8th or 9th, and that's directly due to the policies of this administration.
Back when he was an assemblyman, Upendra Shivakula used to talk also about geothermal energy. Is there a future for geothermal in the state?
It's hard to say, and the reason it's hard to say is because we have no basic information on it. And there's so many huge opportunities in solar and other renewables. I would say that it's definitely worth looking at. but we probably aren't in a position right now to do very much about it because we're not doing the basic stuff with solar and renewables. So at some point it will be looked at. And by the way, Upendra is now on the Board of Public Utilities. I think he's going to make a super contribution there. And again, when we have a real governor and a real Board of Public Utilities, I think we're going to make tremendous progress.
The emphasis on wind energy, going back to that for a minute, has always been on the impact to the ratepayers. But what about the impact on jobs in New Jersey if we had a viable offshore or even onshore wind energy solution?
Yeah, one of the reasons that we passed legislation, and by the way, this governor actually supported it and signed it. So he's signed the legislation, but he hasn't done anything to implement the actual development of wind. But one of the reasons we passed legislation that stimulated by providing certain credits to do wind energy was because we saw it as a potential game changer on jobs in the economy, and not just on the construction jobs associated with the wind, and not just the lowered, hopefully very reasonably priced electricity because of this new resource, but also because we saw it as an opportunity to stimulate a wind manufacturing plant, wind equipment manufacturing plant on the East Coast of the United States. Somebody's got to take that first step, and if we were serious about wind, we would have a manufacturing facility here in the state.
Would you care to comment on the Obama administration's proposal to allow offshore drilling?
Well, yeah, I have no problem commenting. It's a dumb idea. No offense to the president or the administration, but quite frankly, first of all, there's no reason for it. If anything's going on in this country, it's a glut of oil and natural gas. All right, that's why oil prices have dropped from $100 a barrel down to $45 a barrel. There's no reason to be doing it. We have plenty of resources now, and all you're doing is adding to the potential for more offshore accidents, spills, whatever. I mean, how many times do we have to have a BP happen on the coast of the United States?
Changing topics, let's talk a little bit about sustainability. You recently went to Israel to observe some of the activities there.
Yeah.
What have you learned, and what can you bring back to New Jersey?
Well, it was a tremendous trip. All right, and I give the Israeli government kudos for many of the things they're doing. They don't just talk the talk, they walk the walk. One of the things that they're doing, they have a Green Knesset project. And the Green Knesset project, they're doing everything they can to make their parliament, the national seat of their government, as sustainable and energy efficient as possible. They started this program 2 years ago. They have made their heating and air conditioning equipment, they've replaced with efficient heating and air conditioning equipment. They have modified the buildings so that they're energy efficient. They go so far as to have glass pitchers and glass glasses for water. If you go to a New Jersey committee meeting, you'll see plastic bottles of water. Not such a great signal to the people of the state of New Jersey. So they are setting the example. They also do some very interesting things with regard to the environment. I went over to tour the projects of a group called the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel. And every day we saw 5 or 6 different projects, and they are doing amazing things. They have started community gardens in many of their urban areas, and the wonderful thing about this is, in Israel, the population. You want to talk about diversity? That is such an understatement in Israel. So they're bringing in all these people at the community garden who have diverse cultures, and it's actually, beside providing good, wholesome food to the people who are working in these community gardens, it's also a tool for socialization. They're restocking species that have become extinct due to some of the wars and violence in Israel. I mean, you name it. And by the way, the magic moment on that trip was being in the Hula Valley at 5 a.m. in the morning and seeing 40,000 cranes take off to go foraging for food. And they found a way to have the cranes and the farmers work together harmoniously. There was some conflict with it, but it's a great group, and Israel is making a lot of progress environmentally.
So what specifically can you bring back to New Jersey in terms of legislation or initiatives?
Well, as a result of the Green Knesset program, I now have a Green Trenton program. All right, we released those bills from my committee 2 weeks ago, and one says that our state facilities, especially our Trent state facilities, should set the standard for the state, that we should be doing this. We should be making our buildings efficient and sustainable. And then the other one sets up within the state government an Office of Sustainability, which on an ongoing basis will make sure that these projects actually happen. So those are two that directly happen as a result of that trip.
Talk about energy generation in the state. Specifically, we have two nuclear plant facilities,
Right.
one of which is scheduled to close in 4 years. Talking about the Oyster Creek facility, which is scheduled to close in 2019, it seems to me there are three things that we need to be concerned about. One is the replacement of the energy generation at that plant.
Correct.
Two is the remediation of the site to make it safe. And three is the jobs that are going to be lost.
Absolutely.
4 years is not a long time when it comes to planning and
Right.
things like this. The Vermont Yankee plant just closed down. They had a citizens advisory panel to help the power generation company in the state with that closing. Do you envision something like that in New Jersey, or how should we start addressing this closure?
Well, those are big questions. The Oyster Creek, when it closes down, will remove 650 megs of energy from our power supply. That's a pretty big number. Now, if we had a little offshore wind going on, it would be a wonderful thing, and you could actually use the Oyster Creek facility as a energy distribution point. You could have the electricity coming in and then distribute it. You also, because you have generation equipment, may be able to reuse it with other source of fuel other than nuclear. All right, so that's a possibility, and that would help on the job side. But what really needs to happen is a master plan for the economic development of that huge parcel. I think it's 800 acres. Now, a lot of it is wet, can't be developed, but the last I heard, I think we're talking about 200 to 250 acres that could be used for industrial commercial development. And there should be a huge planning effort on that. Now, there is an advisory committee. Has anybody heard what they're saying or what they're suggesting? They set up an advisory committee, and it has the commissioner of DEP and some Ocean County representatives. And anybody hearing anything?
Are there any environmentalists on this?
I can't say with certitude one way or the other, so I don't want to mislead anybody. But the moral in the story is that this is going to be a crisis for Ocean County and for that whole region and for the state in terms of the lost energy supply. And there really needs to be some proactive thinking about how we deal with it. And I can't tell that it's happening. I know there's a committee, but I'm not seeing any work product. I'm not hearing anything. I mean, it's kind of like an awful lot of other things in the state that our needs are just not being addressed.
Switching gears here, let's talk about gun safety. You are sponsoring a bill that would put firearms in the hands of 10-year-olds. Why is this a good idea?
Well, that's a very harsh characterization of it. In about 15 to 20 states in the United States of America, there are, for lack of a better phrase, introduction to hunting programs where youngsters under the supervision of an adult can be introduced to hunting in forests and in the wild. The legislation is really centered on the philosophy of Gifford Pinchot. You know, the big debate in the environment is Gifford Pinchot versus John Muir. Gifford Pinchot was the governor of Pennsylvania who became the Secretary of the Interior under Teddy Roosevelt. John Muir was the naturalist and environmentalist who took Teddy Roosevelt to Yosemite and got Teddy Roosevelt to do the national parks. But they had two diametrically opposed philosophies. John Muir believed that you set aside land and nobody should ever visit it. It should be left, quote, pristine. Gifford Pinchot, as Secretary of the Interior, said we should set aside land, but we should try to get people into the natural settings so that you build a constituency for the environment. Okay? So now you look at this, the bill for allowing a youngster under the supervision of an adult to try hunting. In New Jersey now, if you want to go hunting, you have to go through a pretty extensive safety course, which is a good thing. I'm for that. But the problem is that if for a youngster to say, before they've even tried this, that they want to commit themselves to the safety program, you are not increasing the enthusiasm for young people for being in the outdoors. So the thought, and listen, maybe it's warped thinking. You never know. I mean, I'm willing to start with the assumption I don't know what's best for people, but it seemed to me to be reasonable, and it was at the request of the New Jersey Outdoor Alliance and a number of other very solid environmental groups, to allow an opportunity for kids to try it under supervision, and if they liked it, to then go and take the hunting course and do the whole thing. But the idea is to increase enthusiasm for the outdoors. If I'm wrong, but there's 15 to 20 states that do it this way, and it seems to be working there, and it seems to be accident-free, and it seems to be increasing enthusiasm for the outdoors.
Final question, which is a political one. Even though it's more than 2 years away, do you have any favorites for the governor's race in 2017?
Well, I'll tell you that the three that have raised their hands, Fulop, Murphy, and Sweeney, all of them have their pluses and minuses. I mean, there's nobody that's a perfect candidate. But all three of them could do a 10 times better job than the guy we have now. So I'm hoping that one of the three is successful, and I think that person will be successful. And there may be new people that we don't even know about. But all three of them have sufficient experience, knowledge to do a decent job. But they all have their pluses and minuses, and that's one of the things that when we get to the point where we're actually choosing a candidate, we're going to focus on and figure out who the best person for the job is. But any of the three of them can do the job.
Senator Bob Smith, thank you very much.